Welcome to the Videocraft show presented by Video Husky. I am your host, Jon Santiago, and in this episode, I speak with Martin Wong, an award-winning photographer who's parlayed his work into a significant following as a content creator. Martin specializes in shooting a variety of subjects, but what's really put him on the map is his work with cosplay models and gamers. Based these days in Los Angeles, Martin is also deeply embedded in the epicenter of influencer and content creator culture in the US. So he's got a lot to say about that. And in this episode, we talk about how he got his start in photography, building an online community. He's got a pretty thriving online community actually on Discord, and how to navigate your career as a content creator or influencer. We talk about those subjects and much more on this episode of the Videocraft show presented by Video Husky. I have no formal introduction to this. It's not like, I'm trying to make this as like conversational or just like chill as possible.
Of course, yeah. I have my own podcast, so this kind of the same style that I do anyway.
Yeah, no, and it's cool. I mean, it's just I watched a little bit of your vodcast and it's just a conversation, right? You're just talking to people that you know or people that you want to know, and just asking them and conversating on things that you guys have in common, right?
Oh yeah, and a lot of us are creators, so almost everything that we do, we have to experience a lot of the same things that most influencers have to go through, content creator have to go through, both on the work side or on the life side, the balance, getting burnouts. Like we all go through those stages together.
Yeah. That's something I definitely want to talk to you about on this.
For sure.
But first, I want to start more on you. Like, we've spoken before. You're originally from Hong Kong, yes?
That is correct. I'm originally from Hong Kong, yep.
So tell me about like the origins of your own creativity. You're successful photographer, freelance photographer, content creator now as well. Have you always just been somebody who is gravitated towards doing creative works?
I think so. Like I have a chance to play with Photoshop at a very young age. My dad is a designer, and so I have access to those, software when I was really young. The thing about Hong Kong, especially, is that I think marketing is such a huge part in Hong Kong. Since it's one of the international cities, it's a huge, very dense population, a very small area. So in that case, marketing is such a big thing. You have to be very understanding how to grab people's attentions very quickly in a very short period of time. And that's why, I think creativity really helps when it comes to thinking outside the box, how to break through and how to like making sure you can grab people's attentions.
Gotcha. So when was the first time you like picked up a camera and just started shooting?
I think I actually picked up Photoshop first, then photography. It's hard to say because I travel a lot since I was a kid. My parents believe in traveling. Well, they believe in seeing the world, expanding your horizon, understanding different culture. So it's all over the place. But I think if I'm talking about more serious, I would say maybe when I was around 14-ish, that's when I spent more time working on camera. But like when I was like 16 or 17, I was also the photographer for my school newspaper. So I get to have access to, more gears, so I can get to, play around with photography a bit more. And then when I was in college, I also actually shot for my college. So I actually spent a lot more time on that, and cosplay kind of come around the same time. So it's just a nonstop kind of for me after that.
When you talk about like you started with Photoshop, like what were you kind of like dabbling with? Were you kind of just like dabbling with making your own graphics, or kind of I guess like manipulating images and combining them and splicing them together? Like what were you doing originally when you first started using Photoshop?
So when I first started, of course, I'm learning how to do manipulation. I mean, understanding the idea of the concept of layers is such the first basic thing of Photoshop, and of course, that was really exciting the very first time I learned about it. And then later, I used to play with stock photos a lot. Trying to do photo manipulation, do lots of surreal photos, and then of course later I realized why use stock photos when I can just take my own. So that's kind of helped me transition from retouching Photoshop to photography.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you first started shooting originally, like you mentioned, you got some access to gear and equipment at your school. When you were back in high school, obviously a little bit more once you moved to college. But what was some of the first equipment that you used as far as shooting your own photography?
I feel like this is almost everyone experience in America. Everyone at sort of at one point has played with a Canon Rebel. Either you got it from your aunt or your mom or some relative or some friends hand me down because they got it from Costco for Thanksgiving or Christmas because they always push it during those times. Like I mean, right now it's what end of October, so the next month I'm gonna get a lots of messages from people on the internet like tagging me, asking me like, Martin, what's a good camera to get for a beginner photographer? And because they're getting like all this like coupons and all this stuff that's saying like, hey, buy the new camera for $200 off and all those stuff. And since we're so big onto Christmas present as well, the next 2 months gonna be nonstop of those questions. But yeah, the very first one that I think I really play with digitally would be the Canon Rebel. I did play a film camera before that though. Like my dad actually is also a photographer, so I get to play with like Nikon lenses and film cameras. The crazy thing is that those Nikon's lens still also work with current days DSLR or mirrorless camera.
What's the difference between what were the differences that you noticed when you were trying to transitioning between using film cameras and digital cameras?
I think film at this point to me is more of an art. Like the experience of it is a little bit different because one thing about shooting with film back in the day is that you really need to know how to conserve your film because make every shot count. You have a roll of film, especially when I was a kid. I was traveling a lot with my parents. I was given a point and shoot with a film camera. But let's say I'm only allowed to have a roll of film because film is expensive, especially developing them. So I was given a roll that's about 20 to 30 frames, and I have to make every shot count. So that's really help you think about the processing. When shooting is be less just carelessly shooting. Like with iPhone this day, you will take picture of your food, no question asked, easy. But back when you only have 30 frames for one vacation, like a 7-day vacation, like you need to space it out. Like okay, maybe I'll take some on the plane, maybe some of the especially landscape. Like let's say I'm going to Europe, I'm going to Italy, or I'm going to France, I must get the Eiffel Tower, of course. So I need to save some for that. So we really need to have a method to see how to space it out. And I think that's really help transition to shooting DSLR because then I won't be as careless or like I know how it's going to affect my process afterward.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you put out there, right? Like it's like photos have become and content in general can turn
Hmm.
into like a huge commodity, right? Like cuz
Yeah.
you could take, you want to like I'm guilty of this when I go out to restaurants too, right? Where you go out and you want to get like the best shot of your food, but you're like I'm taking like 10, 20 shots. Exactly, like
Just
that.
spending like
Just
5 minutes going like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
This is
and it's
nice.
and it's like if you were doing that with a film camera, you have to be more intentional
Hmm.
with the way
Yep.
that you're using the device. Whereas these days, people they're not really intentional because it's so easy for them to just click 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 whatever they see pop up first.
That's right. And I think there's also a way for you to still do that these days, other than just, capping on how many photos you take per day, even with camera, digital camera. There's one thing that's when I was shooting for my college, one of the senior photographer, the actual staff photographer, she challenged me to try to shoot with only one lens the whole day. And that's also a great way for me to like see the world differently. When I'm holding my camera, depends on which lens is attached to the camera, it changed how I see the world instantly. Because if I'm using a telephoto lens, I am seeing very far, like the whole time, like because I'm doing like journalistic photography. I'm walking around, like my vision is as far. But if I'm holding a wide angle lens, I would definitely walk around seeing the world in a much wider view. So that kind of help you think about how to shoot better too.
How does that change, if at all, when shooting video? Do you kind of have the same kind of perspective when you're shooting video if you're using like a wide lens versus a telephoto long lens, if you would ever use that to shoot
Mhm.
video? I mean, do the same, I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, do the same rules apply?
I think so because video has it's just a multiple frames all add together. Is you change the method I just told you. What it does is that it changes storytelling. You are changing the way how you see the world. So you have to focus on how to tell the story in wide angle. With wide angle, you can also come closer to the subject. So then you might have a more intimate kind of feeling, kind of feel like, oh, I'm in the scene. With telephotos, you might able to see the world from a further apart, so more like an observation kind of style, observer that you like looking from far away.
Gotcha. I want to rewind a little bit here on something you had touched on a little bit a moment
Mm,
ago about just traveling a lot
mm.
growing up. Like, I'm curious, first and foremost, what were your parents doing that enabled them and enabled you guys to just travel uh, for quite a bit, like throughout your childhood and your youth?
For sure. I definitely miss not a lot of school, but like let's say Christmas break, I'll miss like the last few days of before Christmas, and I'll come back to school maybe a few days late after Christmas, and that happened all the time to the point that my school is like, yeah, it's morning. That's happened. That kid is always traveling with his parents. But my parents, my dad was doing, luckily, fortunately, we did pretty well. He did pretty well as a designer back in Hong Kong as well. So he was a freelance designer. It might be possible that's how I, have that kind of sense instilled in me as well. That I am doing a lot of freelance work. It's a scary thing, and it doesn't work for everybody, and luckily it works for me so far, so I'm very fortunate with that as well. So because he is also a freelancer, he is allowed to travel as much as he need to, or like when he's work he works really hard. Like I have seen him working all night, and I went to sleep, and when I wake up he's still working on his project. So and it's very similar to what I'm doing these days.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds like I'd imagine too, like just seeing your dad do that for a living, freelance, because a lot of people, I think when they think about freelancers, it's like, oh my god, it's a struggle. It's like feast or famine mode or whatnot. And maybe like I would imagine like seeing your dad be able to thrive in that career made you maybe believe like, oh, you know what, this is like doable. This doesn't seem like something that is impossible to do. Does that seem about right?
I think it's more of the challenge aspect, is it really take a certain type of personality. The uncertainty sometimes is better to give you a stronger drive, because if you don't work hard, well, one great thing about being a freelancer is that I feel like I'm more in control of my life. Meaning if I fail or if I succeed, it's my own doing. I feel like there's more of my control, my own destiny, more contribute to like maybe my laziness or my hardworking. Like it depends on what I do, really affect the outcome. Rather than working a 9 to 5 desk job, which is more stable and it feels a lot more secure. But I have done that before too. Of course, I worked in Silicon Valley. I have done many different jobs, and it just feel very minuscule in a giant company. It feels very insignificant, and it feels like a lack of control of my own life. So it doesn't fit with how I want to live with my life too well.
Gotcha. So so I imagine like I know from our last conversation that we had, we're both Davis grads, UC Davis. Shout out to Davis
Hmm.
Aggies.
Aggies.
Um but so right after you finished at Davis, you moved to the South Bay, and you mentioned like you worked in Silicon Valley, and what were you doing out there?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of social media and marketing work. So I work with lots of media giants, and so I have a pretty good understanding on how social media work, like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, knowing how ads buying work, like all those stuff, and how does it relate to the algorithm, how does clients, all those stuff that involve in it. It kind of helped
Gotcha.
me as a content creator too.
Yeah, I'm curious in what ways has it helped you to have that background, getting a little bit of time there working essentially like an office job in tech. In what ways did it help you uh become the content creator that you are today?
I think it really helps me understanding two major things, right? One is what is algorithm? Like, what does it really mean? Everyone, lots of content creators saying they hate algorithm, but algorithm itself is not evil. Itself is actually a way to supposed to improve the user experience. In fact, it is supposed to be really helpful for user. Not maybe not as much as the creator, but for user definitely because is similar to Reddit. What it does is that every time you take an actions or non-actions, it counts as an event. And those will dictate and change how you see future content. Let's say you see a post, it registered that you saw the post, but you didn't like it, you didn't comment on it. It gives us it's kind of like counting cards, it's a -1 in your accounts for that content specifically. So meaning the algorithm learning is like, oh, he doesn't like that thing as much. All right, we'll show him less of that. And then every time you do every single post, it testing that out constantly. So trying to give you the best kind of user experience because it's catering to what you want. Same for Reddit. When you click, people clicking up votes and down votes, it affects what comes up on the front page. So that itself kind of made me understand how I should do posting, how does it affect how I might work. And second thing that helps me as a content creator or in the industry consider influencer is what am I competing against? A lot of time, yes, influencers are competing with influencer, but the biggest competition is actually the platform itself. Like when it comes to making why is it attractive to a company? Like what am I giving to a company versus a company going to Facebook ads manager to buy ads or go to Twitter ads to buy Twitter ads? Like how much is my click matter more for the brand? So I understand that not only I'm offering like better views, number of engagements, and also a very specific catering, genuine kind of connections with the audience and it's brand building. So even if I understand it, the person that hiring me from the company might not understand it because they could be from different backgrounds. So able to understand and explain that concept to them and let them know that you're not just buying, my time, my service, my promotions against a ad platform where you can get like 5 cents per view. You're buying a totally branding, marketing kind of feel, the whole campaign. So that is something you can't just buy from ads buying. Once they understand that, they'll be like, okay, that does help our brand. That does build an image that I want to do. Like for example, right now I am working with a custom build computer company. We actually just finished a meeting. I'm painting them an image on why it makes sense to work with me than just buying ads on Facebook. And I think they really agree with what I have just said.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never even thought about it from that perspective because I always, especially me working in marketing, right? It's very, one of the things that's difficult about using social media these days is how do you get organic reach? Because like as we know, like the platforms like Facebook, like Instagram, eventually TikTok is going to get there at some point.
Oh yeah.
They're very organically focused at this point. But the the platforms themselves these days are really focusing on essentially delivering for the ad spend that companies and businesses are spending on to advertise on their platform. So those placements on like the news feed, it always kind of feels like the priorities are always going to be more so with the brands that are spending the money on the platform. But at the same time, what you're talking about in what you and other content creators bring to the table, and this is something that it sounds like it's really important if you are a content creator and you're dealing with brands, you're thinking about trying to pitch yourself to brands and land sponsorship opportunities, you need to see yourself essentially, as well as delivering like more of a natural branding opportunity per se,
Mhm.
right? Because there's a different feel when you're like seeing something on an ad versus like a paid advertisement versus something that is just like user generated, right?
And this is such a special thing about influencer. And I learned that in the cosplay scene very particularly is that the fans, the followers, are not following just the content they created for the reason. Like, for example, a lot of cosplayer might be like, oh, they create a certain type of cosplay and people like the characters a lot. But oftentimes people starting to follow the cosplayer and any influencer is because of the influencers themselves. They find themselves either the influencer either they're entertaining or they can associate with it or they have like a related kind of view with it. Whether they like the same thing or they hate the same thing, it's very much a way for the influencer to connect with the viewers, with their audience, not the same way a company can. Because a company is a more faceless, let's say, a Coca-Cola doing an ad. I don't know whose Coca-Cola is. I can't look at guys like, that's Coca-Cola. But that's why you can see some transition of bigger companies are doing something similar like that to build that connections. And it's all part of marketing and campaign. For example, you will see of course, the most famous one would be Apple, with Steve Jobs. And of course, now with Tim Cook. You see that with Jeff Bezos and of course Tesla. Elon Musk. People will love him more than the companies he created, and you can see that other companies trying to jump on that kind of method as well. For example, T-Mobile. The T-Mobile CEO is trying to do a lot of videos, a lot of ads about him. He has a huge following himself as well, and that is not something that's really much, you know, appeared before social media. So this is a very different kind of approach when it comes to marketing.
Yeah, it's like the cult of personality, right? Like
Yep.
it's like now the CEO or the founder of the business can kind of become a celebrity in a sense themselves, right? Like you pointed out Elon Musk, like I mean people kind of think of Elon Musk as like a real life Tony Stark, right?
Yeah, I mean the stock get affected every time he says something,
Yeah,
and
every time he tweets, he'll tweet so if
yeah,
he tweets anything about Tesla stock, it'll either go up or go down depending on what he says, and that's
I have
it's
a group of friends who are very involved in stock trading right now, and whenever the stocks go down, they're like, "Oh my god, what did Elon Musk tweet it today?"
yeah, it's certainly yeah, that's really fascinating to think about that. It's just it's so different like than it was before, you know. I mean, but some of it is so similar. Like I've even talked about this with Justin, our founder at Video Husky about
Mhm.
um we working with influencers, content creators like yourself, right? Like you are a customer of ours. And it's almost like I kind of look at it in the same sense as, back in the day when Nike first signed Michael Jordan, right?
Mhm.
He's their celebrity endorser. They make the Air Jordan brand, and then it blows up. He becomes this great player in the NBA, and then at the same time, Nike rides the coattails of that wave, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of similar now with like this influencer space, right? Like if we as a brand or a company, Video Husky, we wanted to do something with you. It's similar in that sense, but it's just not on like that same like magnitude of a scale where it's just like you're reaching a huge mass of people, but you're reaching like the right kind of people, right? You don't
Mhm.
necessarily need to reach like millions of people. You just need
I
to
mean,
reach
there are
the
influencer
right
at every
ones.
scale. There's some that feel millions. I mean, yesterday I was watching the on Netflix a talk show that David Letterman has. He created now. It's called, I think it's My
My
Next
next
Guest Needs
guest,
No Introductions.
yeah.
And the first episode was with what's her name?
Is
West.
it the new season with Kim Kardashian?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Kardashian
yeah.
West. And she used to have like 20 something millions, which is crazy. That is bigger than a lot of countries' populations. About 20 something millions. It's kind of just crazy. And every time she posts something, they're worth a lot of money. So you can exchange her post for almost anything. Now, the crazy thing is that, as you said, endorsements, a spokesperson is such a big thing. And even Nike, as you said, one of the great story from the Nike is that I think it's Jordan. I'm not sure exactly it's Jordan or another basketball player, but they actually banned to use certain shoes from Nike, whatever the rules was for NBA. But NBA still pay the fine, Nike still pay the fine every single time. In fact, it makes a better story for them as marketing because they're saying our shoes is so much better. We don't mind paying the fine to have that extra advantage. And that paints a better image for both the company and the player.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about too. I know that story. I think it was Michael Jordan actually. It
Right?
might have been
Yeah.
like the first Air Jordan shoe. Like there was
Mhm.
something wrong with the colors or it didn't abide by like the NBA rules, so they decided they were like, "Hey, we're going to fine you for wearing these shoes." And his
And it wasn't
Nike,
expensive too. The fine was only like what, a few $100s or something.
yeah.
It's nothing in comparison for a company doing a marketing campaign.
Exactly. It just takes you just take that you just pay that fine with your marketing budget. And the same thing
Mhm.
can kind of be done I guess in like this new world that we're talking about and the one that you're heavily involved in and just content creation and this influencer space. I'm really curious, what do you think about the word influencer? Because it kind of has like this weird connotation nowadays. I mean, I feel like
Mhm.
when I say it, the first thing that comes up to my mind is just some like, attractive looking woman posing in a way that is just trying to, you
Like
know,
Instagram models.
yes, exactly, like an Instagram model trying to get a bunch of likes. But I mean, it seems like the idea of being, you know, a creator is similar but different in a sense. So I guess I'm kind of asking you two questions here.
Great
First,
question. This is a great question, and I was gonna mention it earlier too, because I dabble in both worlds. I also have my own company where I hire influencers. So in the industry, we would call them influencers because like even the job title is not content creator marketing; it is influencer marketing because we understand they are exercising influence over people's buying decisions. So they have an influence. So therefore, they're influencer. But for influencer themselves, they do not like that word because a lot of them starting out making and doing what they love, and this is end up collecting this massive following and end up being an influencer. So the closest content creator has coined the word content creator is the closest thing that could relate to what they're doing. So you don't really see content creator calling themselves influencer because it could also feel arrogant, too arrogant when they say it. It's like, oh, I'm an influencer. I'm making influence. They don't like saying that. But of course, on the industry side, we understand exactly what they're doing. So if you hear someone say influencer, they're most likely from either in the industry or definitely not an influencer. If you hear someone saying content creator, most likely the content creator will say that themselves rather than calling themselves influencers.
do you find like because you do obviously a lot of model photography and whatnot,
Mhm.
um, do you find that people who are more on like the model side, they're more willing to embrace the influencer moniker versus like maybe like the video gamers that you hang out with and who are your friends? They may see themselves more as content creators. Does that seem like something that would be like a valid assessment, or is that a little bit off?
All right, so there's a lot to unpack here. Don't worry, I got you. So for models, there's two types. There are the Instagram models type, where they very much doing Instagramming photos. Some of them very sexy, to really get attention from people. Those are Instagram models. Their massive amounts of income is from working with brand deals, getting sponsorship, that kind of thing. But there's also traditional models, lots of them work with agency. They don't care about falling at all. They, if they have fallen, great. But they get their work from, brands hiring the management company and hire them. Um, so there's two types when it comes to models. Now, when it comes to the gaming side, The funny thing and very interesting is that a lot of gamer Twitch streamers, those kind of content creators, they don't understand Instagram. Their main platform is Twitter. And for models, a lot of them they say they don't understand Twitter. Like they literally use the term, I don't understand it. I don't get it. There's not much to get, to be honest. It's just that because the content they create are so different, it affects how they post. A model influencer, Instagram model, it's easy for them to take a photo and their face, what they're wearing is the product that they're creating. When it comes to gamers, it's more about what they have to say, their opinion over certain games, a certain type of content. So they understand Twitter better, and they don't understand like how am I posting a picture of myself 7 days a week? That doesn't make sense. Why would people want that? So the type of audience is very different for both as well. There's a lot of overlap, but it changed how they see influencing work from their platform and from their content.
Does that influence, for lack of better terms, influence just the decision making behind what platforms somebody wants to be on, right? Because I feel like one thing that is such a big pain point for either up and coming content creators, influencers, is just like this feeling of I have to be everywhere. I have to do Instagram. I have to do TikTok. I have to do Snapchat. I have to do Twitter. I have to do Pinterest. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's almost like, dude, you need to chill out and just figure out what your best channel is and focus on that. And you can post on the other ones, but don't don't sweat trying to be everywhere all at once.
Mm-hmm. So it depends on the content creator, and of course, I suggest mostly have your main one. Like 60% is gonna be YouTube or Twitch or TikTok, whatever. Have your home base, and then try to have your content out in other places too. Because when you're creating content, you really want to create content specifically for that platforms. It changed a lot how Twitter's like seeing video, how Instagram, how YouTube. The viewing experience is very different too. So you have to. It takes a lot of time and effort to create content specifically for each platforms. If you're able to, of course, put your contents in all across all platform, great. But you definitely need to know how to master one first before you do the rest.
How do you go about planning your content? Because I've seen you do some really good things in terms of like repurposing a video that you might use on YouTube and then using it on TikTok too, or making like a TikTok size version.
Mhm.
How do you kind of approach that whole area of, okay, I'm creating this piece of content and I want it to like make, I don't want it just to make one piece of content. I want it to make 10 or 20 pieces of content out of it.
Mm-mm. And yeah, so this is part of like the brainstorming process. Most of the time, I have a specific platform I want to push at that very moment. Like for example, if I really want to push YouTube right now, I would definitely shot my behind the scene content in a horizontal format, create longer form kind of informational kind of video, and then from there I can extract stuff that repurpose for other platform, especially the dimensions and like the content itself within it. And so it's really about which platform you want to push. Then that kind of dictate how I want to create that content for that specific day.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I imagine too, like I want to kind of go into your beginnings and in shifting into becoming a content creator yourself, tying into this. Was Instagram like the platform that was just kind of the most natural for you at first? Because obviously, like as a photographer, right? Like it's a photo platform, it's a visual platform, but Instagram had started way back in the day before they incorporated video with mostly
Mhm.
just photo sharing. Was I imagine the place where you kind of just started growing that following initially, right?
I actually started growing my following with the rise of Facebook.
Oh wow,
So
okay.
even before Instagram, uh, that's when Facebook really pushed for their pages and they want brands and companies to jump on it. And of course, people always complain now. It's like, oh, the Facebook pages reach is horrible. Like your Facebook post isn't getting seen by anyone. But I'm like, but that's what you people ask for it. People always say, I want to see mostly content of my friends. I don't see, posts from my friends and family. That's what I want to see. if you scroll on your face, I'm not sure your Facebook, but majority of my friends, including myself, if I go on Facebook right now, I don't see a lot of pages. I mostly see posts from my friends, and they're also pushing Facebook group a lot. So either friends or groups, depends how many groups you're in. But that's what exactly what people ask for. And now content creator also still get mad. It's like, oh, my stuff not getting being seen. So you have to understand, are you a consumer or are you a creator? If on the consumer side, I feel like it's an amazing thing that happened. On the creator side, of course, it's horrible, but you cannot have both. And then, of course, later I come into Instagram, which is very much a um, creator to audience kind of experience because most viewers won't have, they don't need an account or they don't need to be posting. And that's not, it's not as easy to post for someone who don't want to cater a specific kind of Instagram look or feel. So with Facebook, easier, right? Because you have friends and family, you can say whatever you want. When it comes to Instagram, you have to have photos to go with it. Even if you say, I am bored today, you have to take a picture of you being bored or something related to that caption. So it's not, there's a smaller, very small, tiny bit of barrier of, not entry, a barrier of like creating. So then the form is very different. So Instagram, definitely more creator to viewers versus Facebook in comparison.
So walk me through like the beginnings of that for you when you started sharing stuff on Facebook and then getting traction there. What were you doing? How were you approaching the platform in terms of, hey, I'm going to try and build a following here? I mean, was I imagine something that you were thinking about for yourself? I'm just curious about how you went about doing that in the early days of using
Mm.
Facebook.
So I got started at the same time, around the same time when I got into cosplay. So when I first started shooting cosplay, my photo style, especially compared to most cosplay photographer, they're very vibrant, very colorful, very bright. Something that very stand out when you see it on your phone or on your desktop. And the thing is, with back then, Facebook introduced the share feature where allow you to share your posts on your timeline instantly. Very easy, very fast. And that allows me to get my name out there very fast. So every time after conventions, I instantly, and I teach it in my class as well too, has to do with game theory, which post, which picture should I process first and how to get there. I didn't study photography or anything art related back in college. I actually study economics and international world trade. That's the closest thing to business at Davis because they don't have a business department other than managerial economic, but that's more on the econ side. So I did a mix of double major, right? So with that, I was always thinking about game theory, how to get it out there more with my posts. So for example, very basically speaking, after convention, I will think about the top 2 photos that I'll create. One that I know will do really well for sure, either because it's a very amazing cosplay or a very popular kind of character. And the second picture is the one that will do almost as good, but not sure. But it will like not 100% sure. This one I know 100% sure it will do super well. This one I don't know for sure, but I know it will do well. So I'll technically post this one first. Most people will post their best photos first because they think, oh, the best, of course, get it out there. But that's not the case. After the convention, I'll post the second best first because now I know this picture will come first versus other people who post the same thing. Then that is going to be a win because first come, first serve, people will like that. Okay. And then the next day, I'll post my best photos, which I know will be better than most people who posting the same cosplay photo. So then I have 2-win scenario here. So that it will increase my chance of getting my post more out there, getting more share. So that is how I approach to get my people really start noticing my page. And I was, gaining a lot of followers very fast. And now I'm somewhere between like 90,000 to 100,000 followers on my Facebook page. Still, I mean, it's dropping every day, but yeah,
Yeah, just because it's Facebook.
it's
Like
Facebook. Yeah.
it's so weird to think back like too when we were in college, right? Like Facebook was just a social media app for
Oh yeah,
college
just for
students.
college kids to connect with each other. Like when first Facebook first created, you can't even get an account unless you have a .edu account or email.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that too. I totally remember, I graduated high school in 2005, so I
Mm-hmm.
remember first hearing about Facebook from my friend. we were on like our high school graduation trip, and he was going to the University of Virginia, and he logged on to Facebook at this hotel that we were staying at on the TV, and it had the Facebook before when it
Hmm.
still said the, and
Yeah.
and I'm like, what is that? He's like, oh, it's like this social network, to connect with people
It's like
at your
MySpace for
university.
college kid.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, well, why would I need that? I already have MySpace. I don't need, I don't need to
Yeah.
I don't need Facebook. And lo and behold, like now they pretty much own the majority of the social media market.
Right.
But
Yep.
no, that stuff is like really interesting about the way that you look at posting and sharing content. Now, when you share content, like were you putting in calls to action, like telling people, hey, like this post or share this post, or would you just mostly just rely on the the quality of the image, the quality of the content itself to kind of create the engagement on its own?
I think the CTA call to actions to like or comment and engage is a very YouTube culture. It doesn't apply that well on Facebook or Instagram, and definitely not on Twitter. Oh, sometimes Twitter, but most of the time it's not really something people would do. So you have to create content that make it shareable or likable for people.
Gotcha. What was it like to as you started to amass that following, right? Like as you start to see the numbers go up, and like, oh my god, I went from like, I mean, started at zero, and then you're talking about now you have like around 90,000 to 100,000 people on Facebook. I mean, what is that? What as you see those numbers going up, is it in your mind like? Is it overwhelming at all, or is it just kind of like, oh, this seems cool, you know?
I, I feel like for anyone in the beginning is kind of a shocking kind of feel, right? Like us, most content creators first started out, and we all have this similar stories that we were just making things that we like, and we're surprised, and we want to show it to the world, and we're surprised that many people like it. When you have your first 100 followers, right? Oh wow, there's 100 people. There's like a whole classroom and like two classroom worth of people, maybe even bigger. Depends on how big your classroom size is. Because when you first started, your closest reference would be your immediate circle, like how you are in the real world. If you're a student, you think about a classroom. If you're working in an office, you think about the size of an office. So or even you go to a concert, it's like, okay, how big am I thinking? 100 people seems like a lot. Imagine you go on stage, speaking to 100 people. That feels like a lot when you first started, especially if you're younger. But then it get kind of crazy, because then you go from 100 to 1,000. And I'm like, I don't even know 1,000 friends. I can't even name maybe 200 people. I barely remember everyone in my school. How would I able to know 2,000 people? It go from 100 to 1,000 to 10,000. Then it goes to like crazy, like 40,000, 50,000, and just keep going higher and higher. Like, all right, this is kind of crazy. Like you don't know how this happening, and you don't understand what is it, but hey, it feels good. Like Instagram, Facebook, all this social media likes to reward you based on like how you're doing, and they like to give you that adrenaline rush, or like every time you get a like, oh, and give you a notification. So it's definitely changing how people start approaching social media. It used to be just like, I want to make things that I like. Then it became more of a, I'm gonna make things that people will like, so then more people will like me. And a lot of people fall into that trap, and they will start creating so much content. They feel like they always have to cater to them so they can get the feedback from it. This loop, and create that burnouts for people. So I have went through that once or twice, but as you become a full-time content creator, you need to learn how to take care of yourself and how to pace yourself, and understand the separation between that has become work now. It's not your life, it's not just your hobby. Like I have nothing against people who want to do it as a hobby. Definitely go for it. You like doing photography? Great. You love doing cosplay on the weekend? Go for it. But if you're doing it as work, then you need to approach it in a work kind of manner. Have a schedule. Have something that balances yourself, so then you don't burn out.
Man, there's a lot of stuff I want to actually want to like try and touch.
The more I say, the more like, oh my god, there's so many. Like you have like all this question coming in, but yeah.
Yeah, no, there's so much interesting insights like from what you're talking about there, and just like the life of what you're doing as a
And I love
creator.
helping new influencer coming in too. Of course, they don't call influencer. As I said, they would call themselves content creator. But reality is that they're becoming influencer. And I always ask people too. Sometimes they're friends, and I'm like, do you want to do full-time influencer work? If you do, I can teach you, I can help you. If you don't, I'm not gonna get into it because it's so overwhelming. It's so much going, and it changed how your perspective on things. You might get jaded. It changed everything. So if you want to do it as a hobby, keep at it. But if you want to go full-time as a content creator, I got some tips for you.
See, that's one thing I want to ask you about is just staying grounded through all of this, right? Cuz you're in like this weird, for lack of better terms, like dystopian kind of situation, right? Where you
Hmm.
have this massive amount of influence, right? Like you have over almost like 300,000 people across like your different Instagram channels, I think,
Hmm.
right? So you have, like you said, more people than who went to school with us at UC Davis, right?
Yeah.
While we
If
were
you start
there.
counting, it's take you forever to count that many people like in the room.
Yeah, like more people than the campus population of Davis plus the actual resident population of Davis.
Hmm.
And you're like this, you're like a celebrity essentially to these people, but then at the same time you're not at the same time I imagine you're still able to enjoy like a relative amount of anonymity for the most part, right? Like
Mhm.
because you're
I mean,
not.
compared to movie star or those kind of
Yes.
celebrities, they're talking about millions of followers, or even not even followers. They're just on the big screen. So there's like people at every single level. So it feels kind of weird. Like, yes, I might have a following that I can say something on the internet, and a lot of people will hear it. But there's someone else out there that can say something, more people can hear it. So you keep finding yourself in this like up and down kind of things, like where am I in this, am I able to do this, am I not able to do this, like. So I feel like at the end of the day you should start thinking about what you want to be and what outcome you want to have, like especially because as a photographer, a lot of time my way to approach things is backward, where you look at the final result, you think about what does that look like, and then work backward and become also like again, I work in Silicon Valley, very techy. So you think about troubleshooting. How do I able to resolve all this issue causing me not able to go from point A to point B, which is where my final goal is? Let's say, oh, I want to have 100,000 followers. What is the problem I'm getting right now? Am I not getting enough followers because my posts are not engaging enough? Am I not getting followers because I'm not working with the right people? Am I not creating the right content? Am I using the wrong platforms? So you troubleshoot all those things to try to get to that point, and that kind of help you to decide what you are as a content creator and how to get to there.
Gotcha. By the way, for a real quick second here, I want to just make sure we're good on time. Like it's almost 6 o'clock. Are you
No
good to?
worries. If you need to go over time, I can, but up to you.
Okay, great. This is great. Then we can just keep having this free flowing conversation as much as
I hope it's
possible.
entertaining for you as well.
Oh
I
no,
love
this
this.
is this is what I'm trying to. This is exactly what I'm targeting and hoping to get out of this is like these kinds of conversations about these topics because you obviously have like a lot of insight on it because this is your life, right? And so
Yeah, it's live, it's work I've been doing for over a decade. So it's kind of like, all right, hopefully. I mean, like as I say this all the time too, whenever I help new content creator, doing influencer work, they always ask me, and I wonder that myself sometimes too, is like, why am I helping them? I think mostly it's because I wish someone was there to help me when I first get started and give me some of those insights. But it's funny too, because I feel like if I haven't made those mistakes, I wouldn't be where I am right now too. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. You want to help someone grow really quickly and help them avoid all the mistake, but would they understand? Would they learn as much if they haven't made those mistakes? So it's an interesting experience for me as well, for as a teacher.
what do you tell up and coming creators about what to expect if they actually take this seriously and reach the kind of influence or amount of people following that you've been able to amass? Like what are some of the maybe like the pitfalls that you make them aware of and say, hey, look, you can have this, but at the same time it's gonna cost you this. Is that something that you really want to deal with in your life? Like, are those kinds of conversations that you have when you're talking to these up and coming creators?
Definitely. Like when I first starting, I always give them the answer. Then I realized it's better to challenge them and make them think critically. And one of the things, as you said earlier, is the trade-off. And that's really changed how their lifestyle is. Because as a content creator, you starting to create content not just for yourself anymore. And you have to understand how people perceive you. Like you might want to be a certain way, but maybe that's not how people see you. So as a content creator, they have to pay more attention, not just about their work anymore. It's about them as an influencer. What are they creating? What values are they creating for consumer? What values they're creating for brands? So that is something that they really have to consider when they first, building that brand. Like, what makes you different? How are you not just another Instagram model, or how are you not just another Twitch streamer? Why would a company want to pay you over something else? And it doesn't basically have to do with numbers. A lot of people think, oh, because they have bigger following. That's definitely contribute to a big part of it. But you understand what companies need, as we go back earlier, as I had those, what I said earlier, understanding how to give values and be professional, that's changed a lot. And I feel like influencer, a lot of them, because they started out in their late teens or like, early 20s, they never had a 9 to 5 for some of them. Bless their hearts. But that also created a problem for them not understanding how businesses work, so they need to understand what do people want versus what they want to create.
Yeah, I actually I heard an interview on another podcast recently. Shelby Church, she's a big YouTuber herself, and she was
Mm,
expressing this to Noah Kagan, the host, about just her lifestyle as a YouTuber and whatnot. And she had kind of touched on just this idea of, because Noah Kagan's a businessman. He's a guy who's started businesses, but he's also doing the content creation thing now. But he's able to see content creation from that business standpoint, and that's something that I find really interesting with you too, because you have this background. Like you mentioned, you basically tried to study business in college
mhm.
and set yourself up potentially for a career in that. So you kind of already had that mindset of thinking about things or looking at the world from this like business perspective. But the one thing that she had pointed out is that like a lot of content creators, and maybe it is like what you said, she is young too. She's 25, I think, and she started her channel when she was a teenager. So they don't really necessarily think of themselves as like business entities. And
Mhm.
it seems like that's something that is so important to think about if you're going into this kind of life or career. I don't, because it's really like blended lines here of life and career, but really
Mhm.
kind of thinking about, hey, I'm gonna create content, but there has to be like some sort of business objective here as well if I am, going to be, if it's going to be more than just a hobby. I have to think like a business.
Yep. Yep. Like you, as you said, no, it blends together because as an influencer, the viewers, your audience, they don't want your work technically. To them it's not work. To them, they want your life. So they want a lifestyle. What you're really selling as an influencer is a lifestyle. Something that either people want to achieve someday or they want to live vicariously through the influencer. Because let's say a travel influencer, right? There are some that like travel around the world. They post pictures from very exotic location, like on some private island, just drinking a an alcoholic drink on the beach, listening to cool waves. They're all like clear water, like just painting that image sounds amazing, but there's a lot of work to go into for a traveler creator like that. How they're gonna get there? Are they getting paid to be there? Like how much they're gonna get paid? All this time they're there, they have to plan out their creation process. If they're selling an image where it's just a couple, like a boyfriend girlfriend unit where they go to the beach and they having a great time, for example, then who recording? Are they recording themselves, or are they hiring another videographer with them? What is that like? So that is so much work and planning. But the audience don't want to care about that. They don't want to care about how to work Premiere, how to do exporting, how to do like, what is H.264, what is 1080 by 1920, or like, am I doing 4K? What's the difference between 30 frames per second, or do I go 120 and slow it down? Doesn't care. They don't want to know any of those. They want to be on the beach right now, sipping a mimosa or whatever, looking at clear waves coming in, listening to the ocean. Um, so that become a lifestyle. You're not selling them the work. You're not selling them like, this is me making work. No, you're selling them this life. So therefore, as a content creator, you need to realize that you have to create something that sometimes it might be fictional, because there's so much more. What people are seeing are this much. What you're actually doing are all this behind it to create this moment. And people want this moment. They don't care about this.
Is that hard in terms of just having that perspective to step back from what you are displaying on YouTube, what you're displaying on Instagram, what you're displaying on all these social accounts, right? Like the life, that aspirational life that you are portraying in that, and then at the same time, understanding that you're a regular person too. Like you're a human being. You have feelings. You go through ups and downs too. I mean, I'm gonna reference here. I saw you tweet this not long ago. You said, quote, being a content creator is about being repetitively creative. Hence, most of us would experience burnout at some point. And this is
Yes.
something that you talked about a little bit earlier too. And just, I'd love for you to dive into this a little bit more. Just uh, dealing with reality, the perception versus reality of your life as a creator, and then dealing with burnout as well, with constantly feeling like, hey, I have to post something or share something, or get my calendar in order so that I'm continuously putting myself out there for my audience. How do you deal
That is
with
something
that?
that, yeah, I thought of while driving the other day, because I was driving on the way to a shoot when I was thinking about that. And people crave new content, especially with social media these days. Attention span is extremely short. They want new content all the time, new refreshing content. Um, and yes, to a creator, they're making new content. But to get to making new content, you're doing a very, very repetitive process, which is very ironic, because you are trying to be a creator, a content creator, to escape a routine 9 to 5 job. But this job actually comes with a very big routine kind of style, which is the repetitiveness of creating itself. Like, you have to brainstorm, what are you making and how is that going to be different from the content you make last week. Like, if some people might make the same content, but they still have to be different a certain way. You cannot post the same picture 10 times a month. So you have to always repetitively doing a process of thinking how to create, when to create, and exactly how it's going to capture the audience. So this repetitive process will get burnout if you don't understand that is part of work. So I know one thing you want to explore a lot is the work-life balance. And if you don't separate yourself from work and have set a time for yourself, then you won't enjoy it. And like, and also like, people don't understand. Um, when if you don't separate the two, you're gonna blend the two together and you do not know when to stop. It's better to take breaks than to try to be work continuously. Like a month ago, I took like almost a 5 days break, which is like, I'm not making anything today. I'm just gonna play video games, watch content, watch YouTube, watch Netflix, and don't think about making things yet. I don't even email people and message people, because I know after that break, I feel so refreshed. I can go back full in. My creativity and my efficiency gonna be so much higher. It's similar to you not sleeping for 24 hours working versus you sleep like 6 hours, then you work 6 hours, then you maybe take 2 hours nap and then work another, I don't know, 8 hours. So that 8 hours and that, 6 hour work that you did gonna be total 14 hours. It's gonna be more efficient than 24 hours continuous working, because as a economist, you're gonna hit marginal returns. Your creativity, your productions, whatever it is yes, it's gonna increase, but it's gonna be increased at a decreasing rate. So you need to refresh that to cause your production rates to be higher as well as you go along. And taking breaks will help that.
How often do you take breaks yourself, like throughout the year?
Not enough, definitely, but
The irony,
I
right?
know,
It's like you gotta
right?
take breaks.
As I
I'll
was
take enough
preaching it, I'm
breaks.
like, yes, you need to take breaks. Like, I don't have time to take a break.
Yeah. Oh man, it's yeah. I mean, I feel like that's so relevant for really anybody too. You don't even necessarily have to be a
But
content
one thing I
creator.
think I'm better at now than before is sensing when burnout's gonna happen and able to avoid it. It's kind of like overheating, right? You want to avoid overheating. Just get close enough so then you can get as max production as you can. Then making sure you avoid that. It's like not getting sick, right? It's like you can push your body to the point before you get sick. Because once you get sick, you're gonna be out of commission for like a few days, sometimes weeks. So you don't want that. You just want to making sure you're right almost there, so then you can take a break, then go back into full production.
What are those cues for you? What are the things like? Have you noticed? What are those
Mm.
trends that you notice that are like, okay, I think it's coming. Like I'm about to break. I'm about to have a breakdown here, and I need to like slow down. Like, what are those? Again, what are those cues for you in terms of telling
So
you to
I'm
slow down?
usually very, very good at multitasking. As I'm approaching to the burnout, like again, it should be like an asymptote where you're almost getting to it, but never actually touch, so you don't get to that point. So all these signs that leading up to it, there are multiple signs, right? As someone who can multitask, I will find myself unable to concentrate at 5 tasks at once. I can only do 3 and down to 2. And if I'm getting close to burnout, I can't even think of like try to finish a complete sentence or thought like what is my creation. I can't focus. I don't know what I'm creating. I'm like everything that comes up to me, I have to do that instantly rather than what I was doing. And of course I have tools along the way to help me to be more efficient before that happened, which is like using a task list, always using my calendar and all those things to help me better plan my way. And it does 2 things, right? It make me less stressed, make me more reliant on a specific tool that could be reliable, but also making sure I can tell how many tasks I'm doing at the same time. So those things gonna help me to avoid that burnout and give me a signal to like, it's kind of like drinking too, right? Like when you first start drinking, you'd be like, yeah, I can drink. This next thing you know, you like pass out on the bed and like, what happened last night? Oh, I feel a headache. You don't know how to drink, especially college kid who just started drinking. No idea. Like I was an RA, a resident advisor, taking care of freshmen in my second year of dorms, and I know those kids do not know how to handle their drinking. So I give them a lot of advice, like how to do it, better that way. Not that I condone underage drinking, but
No, we're
I'm
not
saying,
condoning that on this show.
exactly, just in case some are drinking and they know how to drink. So same thing with this, right? You kind of have to learn what are some symptom, what sign that would lead to that point where it's like I'm too drunk or like I'm burning out at creating. Then understanding the sign will help you avoid that, and so you don't have the problem of out of commission for a week.
It's almost like you kind of have to take yourself past the limit, a few times.
Oh, definitely.
You got to like push yourself beyond the brink to see what that's like. I feel like that's so relatable and or relevant in many aspects of life. Like kind of just go to the extreme and then dial it back because then at
And I
least
mean,
you know
it's just
where the
the
peak
same as
is.
that reference or that example analogy you can say with drinking. You don't know how much alcohol you can handle until you got too drunk at least once. And I think knowing that burnouts, then you know where you are. But also like drinking, you can increase your tolerance when it comes to how much you can take.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it takes yeah, it's just like trial and error, I feel like
Yep.
in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um I want to touch on um a little bit different topic here. It's the subject of community. You hear this a lot these days when it comes to social media and whatnot, and we touched on it a little
Mm-hmm.
bit earlier in terms of Facebook focusing a lot more these days on feeding you content from your friends and family, but also from groups. And I know that you have a community yourself on Discord. I checked it out recently. You have like about
Mm-hmm.
500 plus members on there. What are some of the things that you're doing to kind of facilitate the conversation there or curate that community in a sense on Discord?
So for Discord, My Discord has a lot of photographer. We have cosplayer, we have all kind of people, but photographer is definitely a huge part of that community. And so I've created a different channel for what people are looking for. A lot of photographers are facing the same issue, and that's kind of what help them talk about it. If especially if they want to be a influencer photographer, like what are we posting? Like how is it affecting us? Or we can also talk technical. Like some people really care about the technical aspects of photography, some really care about the gear. Like, what am I using? So, a lot of photographers starting out too, and I get this question almost every other day is that what camera should I get? What gear I should use? Or like, what is this? But I bet I can use my iPhone to take pictures better than a lot of people who has never touched photography before with a very nice high-end camera. It's similar to, even driving, giving you an extreme good sport car. You might not be able to drive as well as someone who's been driving, taxi for 20 years in just a very, old car because you need to understand all the stages that you go through to learn, what are you creating. So I think having that background, having gone through, that's all the different photography stages and knowing how much I still have to learn, I can talk to someone to say, oh, this is where you are right now. Let's see what we're looking at. And of course, when new things come out, it's like, oh, mirrorless is a big thing right now. How am I seeing it as well? And maybe that'll give you some insights how you want to approach mirrorless camera. Or they're newer, they have some kind of insight that I wouldn't know because I haven't touched certain equipment or different like editing technique. Like there's some editing technique I should learn from them to see how it works for my workflow. So a lot of them doesn't work with my workflow. Not that they're bad, it's just that doesn't make sense for me. But it might make sense for someone else. So having those conversations really help people understanding there's not one direct path, but knowing different points that can help each other grow is very important.
Yeah, that's cool, man. It sounds like you know, you take feedback from your community well, also, right? It's not just
Mhm.
it's not like a one-way conversation where you're
Mhm.
telling them stuff, or which can kind of happen a lot in social media, I imagine too, right? Where you're talking to the audience, they're following you or whatever. But I imagine, like, in general, that's just kind of a good rule of thumb, right? To have more of a dialogue with
Mhm.
the people that are following you, either on your social media platforms or like engaging with you within communities like that.
And Discord is great for that because it feels more of a community, feel more like a town hall. You also have people standing around talking. Because like when it comes to other platform, which are definitely social media, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you're making a post. So anyone replying to it, they are replying to one main post, this thing that dictate what this is about. But when it comes to Discord, it's more like everyone in the same room, like, let's talk about anything. There's no like one agenda. We're just here to chill and talk about different things that you're interested in.
Yeah. I want to touch on now just the difference between creating videos, filmmaking, versus photography, right? Like you started basically as a photographer. You've jumped into this world of creating video content yourself these
Mhm.
days. Um, what are things that are applicable as a photographer that you apply to your video work, versus the stuff that isn't applicable?
I think one thing that really helps me when it comes to videos from photography background is color grading. And that is something a lot of people are stuck on. I spent, so in the last 3 years of photography, each year I focus on different aspects on it. The year one, let's say, I focus a lot on how to take pictures of people in a different environment, how to do it in like the city, very much like I can learn how to shoot anywhere, literally anywhere. Year two, I really focus on how my skin editing, my retouching, and I spent a lot of time making really high detail photography photos. Like if you check out my Instagram, maybe not the recent one, we're in Halloween month, it's all Halloween cosplay photos, but maybe the month before or the last few months, you can see that I would show the first shot and then like very close up, like a slide two shot actually. Then you can see the close up of how the skin look. And I spent a lot of hours learning how to do that. And in the last year, I have spent a lot of time learning color grading even more. So those three things all apply to videography, but especially come to color grading. You give a very different kind of mood and sense when it comes to having different color.
Gotcha. Okay, color grading. That's an interesting one. Yeah, I would imagine too, like lighting as well is something that can kind of transfer between
Mhm.
both disciplines as well. If you have a good understanding of lighting, like that can really make a difference, right?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I I actually spent the last year learning about videography lighting too. There are different things about it and how to light the subject differently. The thing about videography, however, is movement happens. So I feel like there's actually more leeway when it comes to video to when you do lighting. Like overexposed or underexposed for a small scene is fine because people won't be studying, oh, that shot is too bright, so that shot is too dark. It's a slight moment compared to the great scheme of like, compared to a photo, which is like, I'm looking at one photo, I'm going to study the heck out of this. So I feel like there's more freedom when it comes to videography or more acceptable. You can mess up more a little bit on that sense. So I can focus less on the lighting and focus more on how to tell a story in a different way when it comes to video versus photos.
What about when it comes to planning content for video specifically? Um, what's your process or behind that? I mean, do you kind of think of things in batch, or do you kind of let the inspiration come and hit you, and then you start making it? What's your process behind that?
So when it comes to photography, of course, it's usually a mix of both. You know, you have an idea what you want, and then you create something along the way, and you might discover something as well while you're shooting. That's kind of like with videography. I'm still a little bit newer in comparison to like 20 years of photo experience. So there's a little contrast between the two. So I have to have an idea what I really want to create when I first shooting videos rather than just doing on the fly. But it also really depends on the subject, you know, like how good are they in front of a camera? It's very different for still versus a video. And it's funny enough that a lot of creators, content creators who are not professional actors, actresses, they can only do one or the other. Like there was like some of them are really good at like standing in front of a camera for photos. Like they look great when it's still, but then they don't know how to act when they're doing videos. Or vice versa. Where they'll be like, oh, I'm very good at like flowing, talking, or doing all this stuff while I'm in a video. But if you tell me stand still, like what do I do? They feel awkward. They don't know what they're standing there to do. Uh, Funny enough, like even working with people who makes adult content, they're very comfortable doing videos a lot most of the time, especially if they're like doing cam or that kind of work. But I've done photo shoot with them where they just don't know how to act because like I don't usually just stand here and pose, so they're like don't know what to do. So it's an interesting kind of experience to know that your approach is different, but then their approach is going to be different as well. So very change depends on who you work with.
How do you advise some people when you're working with them in those situations to, you know, work on or improve their confidence in front of the camera, depending on whether you're doing a video shoot or a photo shoot?
Mm. As an extrovert, I love working with people. Like I just love talking to people in general, which is very different than most introverted I know. Most of my friends are introverted because they're from the geek or gaming scenes, and that's a very it attracts certain type of people. Um, but me, I love talking with people. I love interacting with them. So a lot of time, if I know they're more shy in front of the camera, I'll spend the first half an hour to an hour doing a lot more talking with them. I'll let the camera down and try to not think about the camera. I will take photos every once in a while, but you will see me not pointing the camera at the model a lot. The great thing with new mirrorless camera is that the screen is great. So oftentimes I would be just talking while they can see me. So they do not feel like they're looking at a camera. They feel like they're talking to a person. And every once in a while, I'll be like, hey, you know what? Let's get a shot. Let's get some photos. Get some few shots. And I throw in a few jokes. Just talk to them so they feel like it's a more of a human experience rather than having to like, oh, I'm making photos or I'm making videos. Um, it's a lot easier on them, less for them to be, distracted by.
What about for you personally? When you do a lot of your YouTube content nowadays, it's a lot of there's a lot of talking head type of stuff where you're in front of a camera, you're talking to the audience. You mentioned you're an extrovert, so I imagine that helps you with in terms of being in front of the camera
See,
itself.
you would think so, right? It
Yeah.
actually sucks. It sucks so much. Like, here's the thing. I love to be on stage. I love talking to people. Um, that's great because when I say something like me, I'm talking to you right now. I did small interruption with what you just said because I want to express how I feel, and you have feedback. Everything I say, you nod, you smile, you laugh, or like confused. I get some emotional feedback from that. When I'm doing video for YouTube, I'm talking to a blank camera. I'm like, I make a joke, no laugh. I'm like, cool, 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 cool. They make me feel like I'm not doing good enough of a job. So it's actually very different, and it's very interesting for me to experience because streamers that play video games, a lot of them you would think, oh, they must be great in front of the video because that's what they do all the time. So they're great in front of videos, but they're not that great when it comes to human interaction because you would think they talk to like thousands of people per day on stream than they can do with people. No, they're much better at staring at camera and have no worry about how they will react. I'm more worried about how people react. So when it comes to doing just video by myself in my own room, I have to take so many tick because I just feel kind of strange how I say something and nothing come back. It's kind of like boxing, right? It's very different when you're doing boxing at someone or even at a punching bag. But if you throwing punches into the air, you're gonna get tired so much faster. And that is how I feel as an extrovert because you do not have that impact. So you actually use more strength to push out and come back.
Yeah, that feedback is like you don't get that if you're just like sitting in front of a camera by
Yeah.
yourself in your room, right? Like versus like say a stand-up comedian, like a YouTube comedian versus a stand-up comedian. Stand-up comedian can be in front of an audience. They get that feedback, they get that immediate feedback, right? To kind of see
Hmm.
where how the people are feeling versus you can't even really get a sense of feedback until after the video
Yep.
is posted. So I'd imagine too, like this is still, this is still like a work in progress of just like getting better and getting and sticking with it. Do you just ever have moments where you're like, I don't know if I'm good at this. Maybe I should just stop. And if you do, like, what keeps you motivated to just continue pushing forward?
All the time. Like, um, how I keep doing it now is that I have my photography down. Like I am pretty like there's not many things I'm very confident in what I'm doing, but when it comes to photography, I am pretty confident I can say I know what I'm doing. So that gives me actually more you can say like a computer processor, like more processing power and RAM I could allocate to something else. Photography, I can do it half asleep. So then that gives me more time and freedom to learn to explore the new things. Like when it comes to Twitch streaming or YouTube, I get to feel like I am new at this, which is a very interesting experience because then I'm learning all the tricks and stuff in between. And there's other people who are already doing it, so I can kind of see what they're doing. When it comes to cosplay photography, when I first started, there's really not a lot of people I can see what they're doing and trying to understand how I can imitate that process. So everything was really pioneering. So I think the new way of learning how to do video stuff, how to create stuff, and of course, I hate editing videos. So, not an app for video husky, but hey, man, I really enjoy it. Like it makes me able to focus what I love doing, which is like creating content, just doing that part and just throw the parts to give it to someone else to handle the video editing.
I'm curious there about the differences between Twitch and YouTube. Like you stream on Twitch. Have you done any streaming on YouTube at all?
No, I mean, I don't know what the difference would be. It would be, I mean, Twitch would be more focused on gaming, but I'm not sure. I mean, you can do real life as well, but I mean, they're exactly the same. Like Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, it's all just streaming, even Instagrams.
It's just it seems like it's just a matter of like Twitch just kind of being like that's their market. Like they are a video platform, but they've kind of marketed or branded themselves as like the place for video game streamers, right? Versus YouTube, which is like all encompassing
Hmm.
video. Is it something that you've ever talked about with like your friends in the gaming world as to, you know, streaming
Mm.
on Twitch versus streaming on YouTube?
So whenever someone start, so to talk about this, we have to go back to the history of Twitch, right?
Yeah.
Twitch first started out, it's like, Justin and some of the people just like, I want to show people my video games or like how I'm playing. It has nothing to do with a huge platform where I can get lots of money and sponsor, or like none of this. It's just Justin.tv. People wanted to say, show off me playing video games, having a good time. And then because of that, they have nonstop catering to gamers. And ever since then, that is the platform. If you start playing video games today, you want to start streaming, you don't go like, I'm gonna go on YouTube and start streaming. No, no, no. If you play video game, you definitely say, I'm gonna go on Twitch and stream. Help me how to set this up. Because they already have such a huge backbone, structures, everything supporting system for gamers. Now, YouTube and Facebook has spent a lot of money in the last 3 years to grab people from Twitch. We even see Microsoft Mixer try to do that. They bought over Ninja, they bought over Shroud, and is Shroud go for Mixer? I think it's Mixer, right? Not Facebook, right? So they have to spend so much money just to get people off Twitch to go on some other platform. So there's a lot to study from there, and it really depends on what kind of content you're creating. But if you're making video games, most likely you'll be on Twitch first, if not ever, all that whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes total sense to me. Just it is interesting to think about like the origins of of Twitch as Justin TV. I remember it back in the
Right.
day, like it was Justin TV and Ustream like in 2009 kind of battling. I remember for like supremacy in terms of live streaming and whatnot, and then to see
Mhm.
what it became today as like this powerhouse in video game streaming is kind of it's like kind of the quintessential uh I guess
Entertainment.
yeah, like quintessential like tech story, like pivoting
Yeah.
multiple times and whatnot.
Like
Um
it's strange because like you people used to think, oh, streaming, such a weird concept. Who want to watch your live? Like who do you think you are? Like what do you do actually interesting? But then it actually worked. So it's surprising for everyone. I think it was even surprising for them when they first created it. They didn't meant for this to be this platform, and now it has become a multi-billion platform.
it when I think of video game stream, because personally I don't do it. And obviously I know there's a big market out there for it, but when I think about it, rem- it kind of reminds me of back in the day when we were kids. If you go to like the arcade or something, and like there were like people playing Street Fighter or whatnot, and everyone's just
Mhm.
like gathering around watching like some guy or girl just like continuously beating everyone in a row.
Mhm.
Everyone's just kind of like standing around and watching these people play this game. It's similar in that sense, where there's kind of just like this curiosity or this just like fascination with seeing how somebody plays a game, and it's translated over, like scaled now with the internet
Mhm.
basically.
I think there's a few factors, right? That's one of them. Another one is that, especially now, this generation, whatever this generation is you're considering, um, they're a streamer, they're a gamer, a lot of them haven't actually gone through a major war. So their childhood was able to be at the same rise of the first two generation of gaming, Nintendo, PlayStation, all those stuff. And most family, they would have one console, starting out, and a bunch of games. And most likely we have this very common is like the big brother will be playing the video games and their little brothers or little sister will be watching them play. So Twitch streaming, watching gamer play is really give that nostalgic factors of like, oh, I'm watching someone play while maybe talking to them, but mostly watching someone playing video games. It's actually not a weird experience for them. It's something they have been growing up this whole time. So maybe that's really contributing to the factors why people love watching Twitch stream.
That's a really that's a we could go down like a whole rabbit hole, and I'd love to at like another point if we do like a round two of this on just like the video gaming world and even like the cosplay world as well. Like there's stuff there that I would love to ask you about. But I kind of want to start closing things out,
For sure.
just discussing some more things relevant to business. And obviously like your experience as a freelance photographer, um, that kind of has given you a good sense, and also your, what you majored in and studied in college, but those things have given you a good sense of how to handle your business, in particular, taxes, right? Like this is something
Mhm.
that some people, they have trouble budgeting or setting aside their taxes, because unlike having a day job where your taxes are withheld by
Mhm.
the company, you have to set up an account yourself to withhold your taxes. And
Mhm.
walk me through what that's like for you to kind of manage your expenses. Like, do you do it yourself? Do you have an accountant? What kind of tips would you advise somebody who's kind of trying to navigate this world of like managing their business expenses as a creator?
Mm-mm-mm. So let's say, as you said, someone who very focused on, economics. I really think specialization is important. What does that mean is that you, I have an accountant myself because I know how to do it myself, but I'm definitely not the experts in that field. So I think someone that knows better would be more than worth it for me to hire, just so that they can focus on figuring out text. Like I could maybe spend 2 days reading all the text code and understanding how it works, and still only get maybe 80% of the understanding of it. Um, but rather than, why don't I just spend those 2 days working with clients or land the next brand deal that can maybe give me, a few $1,000s or whatever it is, that would be more than enough for me to hire an accountant to do that work, so I can grow my own brand while I'm doing that. So what that means is that when I do all my numbers, my stuff, I know have an idea of sense how much I'm making, and then I'll just making sure. Oh, like it's kind of like a mental notes, right? Let's say you make $1,000, then you just say, I'm just gonna put 20% or 30%, like 200, $300, and not think about it. So I think about this brand deal, I only getting $700 out of this $1,000. So I know how much I'm paying. Like 700 is like, oh, okay, I can use this for food this month, or like I can go toward rent or something like that. Um, so, I mean, that $200, 30% will be more than enough of how much tax supposed to be. That gives me a better kind of a mind concept of how much I'm getting. And then I'll just let the accountant do their work because they know what they're doing, and I can focus on my work, which is creating content. And that's what most tools and utilization is for. Focusing on what you do best and let someone else to do something else they're good at. So you'll be very efficient about it.
What advice would you give somebody if they're going out and looking for an accountant for the first time? Like maybe like what are some questions that somebody should ask if they're interviewing somebody to potentially become their accountant?
So if they're a content creator and they're looking for an accountant, there are some, and like the one that I'm working with right now is an accountant work with content creators very specifically. So you should find someone who are like that. I mean, basically even ask them like, hey, do you know what Twitch stream is? And if they say, what? And you're like, have a good day. That's it. Like, because if they don't understand that concept, there's a lot of things that are really confusing for them. Like, why are people donating you money? What are cheers? What are subs? Like, and then you have a Patreon or something like that. So like all kind of platforms that you use to generate money, or like brands are giving you $5,000 to make a post. Like what's going on? If the accountant doesn't understand that, then they might actually make it worse for you because they do not know how to categorize what you do and even your expense. Like why are you some maybe streamer do mukbang where they eat on stream? Why does that food go toward expense? Like because that is basically what you do. People literally pays you to eat. Even some of my food vlogging content creator friends, I'm like, so if they don't understand that world, they would not understand how to categorize you. They don't understand how to make the most out of your accounting.
All right, man. Like last question I want to ask you here, related to this. It's very relevant to what you just brought up about potential, people who do mukbang videos and whatnot. Can you share with me any unusual expenses that you've been able to deduct yourself during tax time?
I'm sure like all kind of things because I am such a content creator that I love doing content. Almost everything I do are expenses. Like I could buy almost anything, like even a vacuum machine, because like right now, what you're looking at this room, like this is not a normal person room that they would normally have. Like every lights that you behind that you see are like made for this stream. If I want to do like if someone raid me during a stream, I can make my lights go like this crazy just so then it's more of an entertainment. So even my light bulbs, they're all part of the expense because it's part of the experience that people using. I don't know. I feel like there's so many different things that I use because when you become the type of content creator that I am, you start thinking sometimes like this is great for enjoyment. And of course, it's going back to the work-life balance. Like this is something I love, but what if I make them into content? And that happens like all the time. So it's almost anything you want to buy.
Awesome, man. Well, Martin, this was fun, man. We're basically like an hour and a half into this. This was a really cool conversation for me, and I hope it was for you as well. And
Oh, definitely.
if down the line,
Like
it
I
would
would
be
love to share this information with everyone else too. So when everything's wrapped up, I would love to share it with people. I mean, of course, I record it as well, but I know you guys have yours. And I actually about have to go do a shoot right now, a new cosplay shoot too. So it's a good time to wrap up. Of
okay. Awesome, man. Well, yeah. Hopefully, we can do a round two at another point because again,
course.
there's so many things that you know about this world that obviously people who are gonna end up watching this, they're gonna be curious to learn more from somebody like you as the experience that you have. So, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, man. Thank you.
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on, and I'll talk to you all later.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Martin. All right, man.
Of course.
Once again, that was Martin Wong. I want to give him a big thanks for coming on the Videocraft show. And if you'd like to learn more about Martin or you'd like to connect with him, we've got links to all of his channels that he's active on. I'm talking about Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, Discord. There's so many channels out there. You name it, we got it. It's linked in the description on the YouTube video if you're watching the video or in the show notes of the podcast. And if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. We love to hear your feedback. We love the constructive criticism. It's a way for us to improve. It's a way for me to improve the show. And if you want to stay up to date on all the content that we're creating, including the Videocraft show, make sure to sign up to our email list. We've got links to that also in the show notes and the YouTube description. Until next time, adios.